ADHD and ADD tonight.
Yes, and I'm Michelle. I am a child life specialist. I've been working with kids for over 20 years, and I've got 2 of my own. So again, today is just an educational workshop to help you understand where your child is coming from, whether your child has been diagnosed, maybe you're waiting for a diagnosis, or you're just wondering maybe this is a possibility that they might have ADHD. We're just going to chat about some behaviors and some strategies. So I thought this was really nice. AttitudeMag.com is a great resource for you as a parent. They have information, they have free webinars, so it's always good to be informed. But parents of children with ADHD have to deal with so much more than a typical parent. I feel as if we use every ounce of our energy to help our children. We're constantly researching therapies, medications, fidget toys, study aids, and so on. We're also constantly advocating for our children and defending them. So this is from a parent probably that sent this in to the magazine, which is an online thing. However, it probably does really touch on a lot of things that you may be going through yourself, because these children are wonderful. They're bright. They're full of life. They're usually not the couch potatoes. They're the ones that are out and running around wanting to make friends, but they can be very exhausting, especially when we're not all on the same page. People don't understand what's going on. And sometimes when a child is yet to be diagnosed, they feel different. They know that they're doing things differently, that people react to them differently. So that's really hard for them emotionally and hard for parents to have to handle their behavior and then the emotion that comes along with it. So it can be exhausting.
So when we talk about ADHD, it's actually combined now. So we don't typically separate out ADD from ADHD. It's all kind of put together under one heading. So it just basically refers to attention deficit hyperactivity, but it means, they may not have the hyperactive component, right? So it's a condition that basically makes it very challenging and difficult for them to pay attention and or to control their behavior. So they may have the inactivity or the inattention, or they may have the hyperactivity component, but they may not have the inattention component. So it just depends on the type of the diagnosis under that main umbrella. So what it isn't is it's not about laziness. It's not about their lack of motivation, and it's not a behavioral problem. It's something, and it's not something that they choose, right? So this is an actual neurobiological issue, right? Things are not working properly in their brain. It's their braking system in their brain. It's that sort of mechanism that doesn't allow them to sort of stop that impulse control to say, no, I need to sort of put the brakes on, not do that. They don't have that mechanism quite working right. So it is an actual problem that needs to be dealt with, and there is help to work with that. And medication is a whole other issue. There is a workshop that will be coming up, I believe, in April by one of our developmental pediatricians. Maybe you can post that if you wouldn't mind, Louise, so that folks have that as a heads up. It's a really good opportunity to kind of have a discussion with one of our docs to give you more sort of medical terminology around ADHD and understanding sort of some of those medical background pieces about medication and pieces like that. Okay? Do you want to set up the video?
get your backpack. Way to go. Don't forget your homework. Okay, and clean your room. We have company coming tonight. And clean your room. We have company coming tonight.
Oh, man. Oh, my homework.
Come on, Billy. We've got to get going.
Gosh, I was looking for this. Took weeks for me to find this. And there. Awesome.
Come on, Billy. Let's go.
Oh, yeah.
You have your homework?
Mm-hmm.
Good morning, class.
Good morning.
Everybody please take out your homework from last night. I'm going to pass back your quizzes from last week. Nice work, Billy.
Thanks.
Do you have your homework?
No, I think I left it at home. But I did it.
Okay, well, bring it in next class, all right? Before we get started, did anybody have a chance to look up yesterday's question on Washington, D.C.?
Ooh, my mom and dad took me to the Air and Space Museum.
I'm sure that was nice, Billy, but if you know the answer, please wait for me to call on you. Anybody else? Susie.
Washington, D.C. wasn't always our nation's capital. Philadelphia was the capital before that.
That's right. In fact, our nation had two capitals before it. The first one was in New York City, and the second one was in Philadelphia. And then it moved to Washington, D.C., where it's remained for over 200 years. All right, we're going to have a pop quiz. Please take one and pass it back. You'll have 15 minutes to complete the quiz, and please put them on my desk when you're finished. Billy, you only need one pencil.
Okay. Whoa! So cool.
Billy, please take your seat.
Fine. Okay, gotta get this finished.
Okay, everyone, time's up. Pencils down. Please bring your papers up.
But I didn't finish.
It's okay. Bring your paper up anyway.
Any thoughts or questions about that? I just thought it was a really good video to kind of share those things that just get in the way. They're not doing things on purpose, but their brain is just firing off at different, at a different rate, and that impulsivity is really hard for them. And then as parents and as teachers, we sometimes feel like we're constantly micromanaging them and that they're almost doing things on purpose. So it can be frustrating, but this is ADHD, and it can be helped, but this is something that you're going to be dealing with. Right?
And I just want to say that sometimes the kids that have the inattention piece but not the hyperactive component, a lot of times they can fly under the radar because they're just kind of maybe sometimes seen as dreamers, and they're just kind of drifting off, but they're not really necessarily causing as much of a sort of a flurry or a behavior issue in the classroom or at home. They're just kind of maybe not getting stuff done, but they're not as much sort of in people's sort of mainframe, right? Whereas the kids that are more hyperactive, they're kind of like maybe pushing or getting into trouble or that out of seat behavior. So it tends to draw more attention. So again, just be aware that if you've got those kids that are dealing with those inattention pieces, and you're noticing that they're kind of being that little bit of a dreamer or sort of drifting off and sort of losing focus more, you might want to kind of pull them in a little bit because they might be sort of being lost in the sort of scope of things, okay?
Okay, so typically we're looking at, onset is usually before age 7. When they're testing, however, the majority of the time they're probably waiting until they're in grade 1, though, because they're needing to be seated longer, that kind of thing. But usually parents are like, something's up. They kind of know that something's up beforehand, but usually the testing isn't done until 7.
So this is that sort of inattention piece, and just sort of drawing a little bit to your mind about what does exactly that inattention look like. And it's that sort of difficulty keeping their mind on a task, and they get bored easily, really hard for them to sort of stay focused. They may jump from one thing to another. So if they have homework and they have like a lot of things that they have to accomplish, it may be really tough for them to stay focused on completing like a whole string of questions maybe that they have to complete. Or if it's a big project, it may have to be broken down into smaller bits and pieces. They get very easily distracted, right? They don't follow instructions carefully, but it's also not about processing what those instructions are. So they hear them in bits and pieces and sort of chunks. They may hear the first step, the third step, the fifth step, so they don't hear it sort of in a concise way. So things often become very disjointed. So they really sort of, lose track of things, as well as like even just their tools or like their pencils or papers. They kind of forget where they laid things down. They forget the order in which things need to be accomplished. Maybe they forgot to write down what the question was. So they may need to have some guidance around helping to structure some sort of tools to help them sort of remember what is being talked about and what needs to be accomplished.
And the hyperactivity is that, it's just like that motor that's constantly running, having a hard time focusing, but it's that moving, that roaming, that fidgeting, squirming, where they kind of feel like they've got a motor running, and it's really tough for them to shut that down. And it's those speaking out, blurting it out, difficulty waiting their turn. And it's that emotion that is like, just, I got something to say, I'm going to say it. I'm feeling something, you're going to know about it. It's really tough for them to pause. Just like in the video where everybody continues, they know the rules, they're continuing to do the test, and there is no hesitation. It's like, there it is, I got to check out this fire truck. And the child sitting at a window is not a good idea if they're easily distracted, because one minute it might be a fire truck, then it might be a squirrel, eating a nut that they're watching. Same thing if they're sitting very close to the door. So these are things you want to think about and talk about with your teachers, because these are things that will get in the way of their learning.
So this is the stages of that impulse control. If you remember when I first started talking, I was talking about that braking system. And this is basically what we're talking about. So they're sort of faced with, they have sort of kind of an urge. So if you think about this, the best way I can kind of put it to you is if you think about that impulse sort of aisle in the supermarket or in the grocery store or wherever you are, where they have all the knicky-knack things or the candies or whatever. So you're there and you're hungry and you see those things and it's like, oh, I don't know, what's your favorite chocolate, Michelle?
I'm thinking about the donuts in the lunchroom. That impulse that it's like, it's fine. I'm going to have it.
It's all about the donuts in the lunchroom. But it's that thing that you see, and it's that, oh my gosh, I have that urge, right? And then it's kind of creating that tension in you because it's like, ooh, do I have it? Do I want to have it? Should I buy it? Shouldn't I? Should I buy it? Not buy it? Should I eat it? Shouldn't I eat it? I'm going to pay the price if I do, if I don't. And then I now have to sort of make a decision. So am I going to act? Am I not going to act? And then I may say, okay, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to eat the donut. I'm just going to buy that, chocolate bar or whatever it is that I see. And then at the moment, I feel like, oh, this was heavenly. The donut was so good. It soothed my soul, right? And I felt a real sense of relief. And then after I've eaten the donut, oh, now my gut's starting to tell me, oh, what did you do that for? And now I used up my money, or if I bought that thing that I shouldn't have bought and I don't have the money to maybe stop and get something else that I need, now I'm starting to feel like crap. Now I feel guilty, and that is that whole stage of impulse control. Now, people that don't have ADHD are able to control that urge, and they're able to control the action. They're able to make that decision to say, you know what, I can put the brake on. I can pause. I can make that decision, except for Michelle. Michelle's still going to eat the donut. But it's about being able to put that brake on to rationalize it out a little bit, right? You're able to say, yeah, I really want it. However, I know that I'm not going to feel good if I eat this, or I know that I'm going to pay the price for it physically, I'm just not going to make me feel good, and I'm able to sort of, tease it out for myself. But somebody that has no impulse control is just going to act. It's just going to, yep, this is just going to happen, and I'm going to go through this cycle, right? I'm going to feel good in the moment, and then I'm going to feel lousy afterwards. And it could be even that it's a physical response where, maybe a child impulsively pushes somebody or hits somebody because, they made them feel, upset or angry or sad, and they have sort of a behavioral reaction, and that may be the action that they take, and they immediately feel relief because they feel like they've acted out that emotion, and then they feel guilt for that as well.
Yeah. And this usually is where a lot of kids get into trouble, is with this, the way they react. And then you've got that guilt or that shame that goes along with it, right? Like I am a bad person, or I've done a bad thing, which is that shame and blame kind of thing. And that's usually why a lot of these children then start lying, because I know better, and I'm just going to be told that I know better, and I made a mistake, and now I'm going to get yelled at, and I know, so I'm just going to lie about it. And that does come up a lot for parents that have children that struggle with their behaviors, because it could be, my brother left out his video game and I'm going to play it, and now I dropped something, or I broke something, or, I ate the last donut even though it wasn't, my donut, it was my sister's donut, and then you lie about it even though they've got chocolate all over their face, because they feel the guilt and they feel the shame. So that impulsivity is really tough for them to control sometimes. A lot of times.
A lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
So environment plays a really big role when we think about, what are some of those external factors that it's affecting your kids that, if they have ADHD, we have to sort of think about what are some of those other forces that are sort of coming in and sort of disrupting things as well. So school and home environment can have a huge influence over the severity of the disorder. So if there's lots of, chaos and things are disorganized, if they're not feeling like the teacher is very supportive, depending upon the parenting style, right? If you have a very passive parent, if you have a very aggressive parent, you can have a very laissez-faire kind of parent that's like, oh, well, so, if you don't get it done, it's okay, no big deal. So depending on parenting style as well, that can really affect sort of where things are going to go. And it's not that the ADHD is going to disappear if you have, a really solid rock sort of parenting style, but it's all about sort of level. Right? So it's going to affect sort of the degree of impact, if you will, that the ADHD may have on their day-to-day functioning. You want to add anything to that, Michelle?
I think that's a good point, and a lot of it too is that's why we really want parents to come to parenting workshops, because when we get more organized as the parent, where we understand where the behavior is coming from, we're not constantly fighting fires, the child is going to feel more at ease. They're going to feel heard, and then we're helping them with tools to empower them, because they are those children that are going to have to work harder, that are going to need more time, a lot more patience. But when we have them organized, when they have a routine, when you have to get them up half an hour early, because these are the toddlers, these are the children that are going to be looking out the window instead of eating their cereal. They have no concept of time. So if you're running around trying to figure out where your phone is and packing lunches, 15 minutes before you have to get out of the house, and the child is disorganized, it's a whole bunch of flurry. So working together, understanding where they're coming from, can really set the child up and yourself up. And then the whole house then can be a lot calmer, because the other thing that's affected is the other children and the siblings, and then that can cause friction as well between siblings. And it just keeps going and going. So the more that we have some more of a supportive environment for them, the better. So I don't know if you've heard of executive functioning, and executive functioning are those things that kind of help us get through our day. It's impulse control, it's time management, it's emotional regulation, it's all these things that we need to do well in life. And children with ADHD struggle with organization. They struggle with impulse control. They struggle with time management. So all these things that help you to be more productive in life, they are struggling with. So we have to work harder to support them, to give them those tools, because it's really tough as a child to be struggling with all these things, and they keep piling and piling, right? Emotionally and socially, they could be up to 2 years behind. And so you've got a child that maybe is in grade 4 and would actually prefer to play with the grade 2s, but they're not allowed. You know, they have to stick with their own age groups or whatever that looks like. You know, at school and at home, they're struggling because they have a hard time with that self-regulation. Extracurriculars can be really hard. And so all those stressors, the things that they're struggling with, affects what it's like to be a soccer player on a team, to be at home and to get along with your siblings and not be, you know, micromanaged and yelled at all the time by your parents, and then at school. So as you can see, we're really trying to help you understand what that child is going through and give them the tools that they need, and also empathize with them, even if you can't understand it, to try to find some of that kernel of truth in them, in what they're going through. So this is just executive.
Yeah, this is just a really nice summary of just thinking about, you know, that executive functioning is really like that sort of toolbox, if you will, right, that allows us to do all of these things that Michelle was talking about, like making plans and being flexible. And asking for help is a really tough one too. Like, you know, when, you know, that in itself is a really huge skill for these kids. I mean, it's a skill for kids just in general, but especially when they're really struggling, because they know they're struggling. And it, you know, they kind of almost may feel shameful. So, you know, to think about asking for help can be a real struggle. So you may have to validate a little bit of that with them, that it is okay to reach out and say, you know what, I'm having a hard time, right? And help me understand what's going on so that it's okay for them to be able to ask for help that way. But just think about executive functioning as, you know, this is kind of those set of tools that really helps you get through your day and be able to process all those parts, right? Yeah. Is this a link to something?
Reference is, just wonder what we'll have. Learning, I'm just trying to look at it. Differences, personal stories. So I think this is, this is a video in here, I think. Marika, is this a video in here?
I'll check and I'll get back to all of you.
This video.
Okay.
It does say video. So what it is, yeah, it's kind of a cool, it's this boy that's a dancer, actually. That's what the video is about. What we can do is just move forward, and if we have time, we can come back. It's just a really cool video to show you that when a child is focused on something they really love and they're given a positive outlet, it can be really cool to see how well they can thrive and do well and build their confidence. Because having all these deficits and all these struggles affects their self-esteem, affects how they feel they contribute to the world. So having something that they can participate in and do well in is a really cool thing. So we'll move forward, and if we have time at the end, then we can pull the video up. Okay.
Okay, so our first tip is really about thinking about getting organized. And again, sometimes, you know, home is chaotic, school may be chaotic, so the more that we can sort of try to pull things, and it's not about being overly organized or hyper-organized, because we know that if you overschedule children as well, you're going to get some revolt that way and have problems. So this is about just some basic sort of organization skills to kind of help just have a place for things, right? So if you're trying to sit down and do homework or well, right now everybody's, you know, a lot of folks are doing the, you know, at home school. So if you don't have a place for things and it's like I'm sitting down to do school and my notebook is over here and my crayons or my pencils and pens are somewhere else. Really tough to try and keep on top of things, right? So making sure that you have a predefined space for things. Where are my books? Where are my pens? Where are my markers? Where do my toys go? Do I have bins for my toys? If you've got really little ones, having, separated boxes and bins. These are the trucks, these are my Legos, these are, my stuffies. And making sure that they just have special places for stuff. And having it organized, and maybe doing that modeling with them and showing them this is where it goes and helping them with that process, because sometimes expecting them to tackle a big task like that, to pick it up or to organize it in the first place, is too much. So you need to be working through that process with them and showing them, sort of what some of that expectation is, maybe doing it alongside of them. You pick up some, I'll pick up some, and we'll get it done together. So using homework notebook organizers, especially for older kids, can really help them as well kind of get things written down, especially for those kids that forget things or sequences of things, making sure that they're jotting down what needs to be brought home from school, or even if it's the online learning, making sure that they're taking a good note about what needs to get finished or completed, and using those charts and timers and visuals. I mean, we know that, a good portion of our comprehension comes from visual learning. So, we have to see stuff, right? So using those visual charts, having little things up, this is the order that we do stuff. We put our shoes on, we put our coat on before we go outside. Having stuff in order is really important, and it helps them sort of feel a little bit more independent and in charge as well, right? They can have a to-do side, a done side. They're more involved in the process rather than just sort of flailing around and not really feeling like they know what to do with their day. Do you want to talk a little bit about timers and more about visuals, Michelle?
Yeah, I do want to, before we move on to the next slide, there is a question that I do want to address, but I think the timers and the charts are really important because we are visual learners. You do not go to the grocery store and just say, I'm just going to pick what I think is going to be fun. Or maybe you do, and then you come home with all the fun stuff and you forget the milk and all the things that you do need. So it helps to build autonomy. You want them to be independent. You want them to start doing things on their own. But if we're constantly talking at them, we turn into Charlie Brown's teacher. So having a chart, having a checklist, they have to start organizing, understanding how much time they have left, how much time something will actually take to do. If it takes them an hour and a half to get ready in the morning, but we wake them up and we let them sleep in, and they only have half an hour, we're just setting them up for failure. We think that we're doing them a favor, but it's not. So they may be miserable because they're tired, but maybe we need to start going to bed a little bit earlier, and let's have a checklist for evening and what we have to get ready, and then we have one in the morning. What goes in the bag, all those things that they're going to need help with and more assistance. But is it that they won't do it or they can't do it? Because a lot of times they forget. It's not something that is of value to them. So it doesn't matter. You know what? And if I forget my lunch a bunch of times, you just bring me McDonald's. So what's the motivator for me to bring my lunch? So working together with them is really, really important. And this is really good for them, especially as they turn into teenagers and even adults, because this is not something that's necessarily going to go away. There are percentages of children that this does, but majority of people will have to deal with this into their adulthood. So as far as the question goes, the question is saying you have a hard time knowing when their child is doing the best they can and when there is room for more. I don't want to expect more than what they can do right now, and they're teenagers. Well, I think that could go for anybody, whether you have ADHD or not. But if you feel like they've got more potential, then maybe you need to have that conversation with them. You just have to be really mindful of how you do that. And if it's a shaming and blaming kind of thing, like you can do better than that, or, comparing to their sibling or to a cousin or to their friends, that can turn into that shame and blame. It might shut them down. It doesn't help motivate them. But ask your child how you feel that they're doing. Or maybe they're feeling stuck and you're feeling like they can do more, but they don't know how to do more, or it's not something they think about, right? So we may have to put that in their head to say, I've noticed you've done this and this. What do you think about taking the next step? How do you feel about that? What is something that I can do to support taking that next step? But put it on to them, especially as teenagers. What is something that they can do to help push them forward, and then what support do they need, right? Anything you want to add, Sue?
No, I think that's really good.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this is a big one about that being specific, and I really like this, rules of the house. They're very straightforward, and it's just that it's clear and it's concise. And I think sometimes, we can kind of rattle on a little bit as parents, and we get too muddled with our messages to our kids. So being very clear and precise with our expectations and including them in the process of this. So if we're setting up house rules or routines or whatever they are, include them in that process, right? So if you're even doing like that, like a to-do and done list or whatever, or setting up a checklist, you want them to be part of that process, right? And keep it simple, keep the language simple, keep it appropriate for where they're at, where they're functioning. If you have a teenager, you don't necessarily want them to feel like, this is beneath them. So, how can we set this up so that, it's something that you're going to buy into? But again, you want to keep it straightforward so that everybody is clear, and keep it about things that they can do rather than focusing on things not to do.
Mm-hmm.
That automatically shifts the mood set, and it's a lot more positive. Okay.
And I think too, I like that Sue's saying to include them, because if we establish group rules, if we were in, a room and we would have to establish group rules, I could rhyme off a bunch of rules, or I could say, what do you think would be an important group rule? And it's probably what I'm thinking, but you're saying it, so you're more likely to follow through with that, right? So, this is a cute the meme, that we found online, but sometimes it is just that, you open it, close it. You turn it on, turn it off. It could be just that simple, but maybe a child is thinking, what are you talking about? Turn it on. Turn on what? So it may be specific. You turn on a light to the room. When you leave, turn the light off. And you do have to be sometimes that specific. Because even, if you can't do better, don't judge. I mean, what does that mean to a child? A lot of times they're like, I don't know. And yeah, I can do better. I think I'm better. So I'm going to let that person know that they did it wrong. So this can turn into that sarcasm and kind of funny stuff that doesn't work with these kids. Of course, we're teaching adults, so I put this up because it's kind of fun. But you may have to be a little more specific. And what are the issues in the home? If swearing is an issue, that needs to be there. And what happens if they break that rule? Because if we have the rule and we just stop doing that, stop acting that way, what's going to happen? Maybe they're going to have to clean the sink or put the garbage out for their sibling because that was their sibling's chore. But talk to the kids about it. What do you think if we break these rules, what should happen? Okay. Routines.
Oh,
Important.
I can't really read this. It's so tiny.
Yeah, it's a little bit small, but it's basically, I'm assuming that it's put your bag away and your shoes away, wash your hands, do your homework, and then you can have a snack. So this is also great for children as well, because when you've got a child that is not easily motivated,
Thank you, Louise.
Does say that. Look at that. I was looking at pictures and I figured it out. That's why pictures are good. Add pictures.
Add pictures and then ask Louise to make it larger.
But, when they do these 3 things, then they get a snack. If they're not hungry, they don't want a snack, no motivator. But if they want the snack, they're going to do those 3 things. Or it could be when you do these 3 things, then you get a check. After 2 checks, you get a loonie or an extra story at bedtime. So this is what the expectation is. If you want to watch your video, if you want an extra story at bedtime, then this is what you need to do, right? So using even those, that framing of when you do what I want, then you get what you want. You're putting in that motivator, and some parents get really upset, like, well, they should just be listening, but they're not. And they need a motivator. And they don't value washing their hands and doing homework. They value the snack. They value the video. So we have to be mindful of that as well, and that what you value is not what the child values. So something to keep in mind as well. What is it that they value? And then what's motivating to them, and work with that.
Absolutely. That carrot is really what's important, right? That's what's going to get their buy-in, right?
Yeah.
So rewards, right? So again, we talk a lot about rewards because sometimes, parents again feel like, well, why should I have to reward, right? Like they should just be able to do stuff. But if people, and if kids are really struggling with a particular behavior, or a particular skill or a particular chore or task, it's no different than, you were teaching them how to potty train, so you need to maybe go through the steps and maybe help them with that process. So it's not something that you're going to do forever, just like you didn't continue to give them, treats for potty training. But it's something that, here I've got a thing popping up on my screen. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh, what's happening? They've lost everything? Okay. Like Sue was saying, a reward is to get something started. Just like the when-then, when you do these 3 things, then you get your reward. And that works for all ages. I see the question about older kids. I mean, this is for everybody. What you're teaching them is what is important, prioritizing. If you just say, do whatever, I'll do your laundry for you, no big deal. You can have your phone and you can stay up until 3 a.m. even though you're failing math and you're exhausted and they can't get you up in the morning. That's not working, right? What is the motivator here for them? If they want their phone, then prove it to me that you can get to bed on time. First you have to do your homework, then you can go out with your friends. You're not drawing pictures of things, but you still have those clear expectations. You still have those checklists, and you're being very clear with what you need and what's going on. So it's the same thing for rewards. If you're struggling with getting something going, then a reward, and a reward can be noticing, a thumbs up, a sticker on the top of their hand saying, I'm noticing your effort, but keep track of it, and it's not something that you're doing for long, long periods of time. And if a child struggles to be good for half an hour, then you're not going to give them a reward on Sunday. Then they're going to say, this is not motivating. This is, so what is it that they value? What is it that motivates them? And what do you want to get started? Okay, just like potty training. You don't continue giving them a Smartie when they go to the bathroom when they're 15. What you do is you get them to go on the potty, and then eventually you take that away. So notice what they're doing, pay attention, keep track, and what is the motivator for them. But you do have to talk to your kids about it as well, to say we're struggling with doing this. We're struggling with cleaning up after ourselves. We're struggling with getting homework done. What is it that you're struggling with? And can we add a motivator to there? Okay. So asking for help is really important as a parent. So connect with your doctor, work with the school, advocate. Taking parenting classes is really important because these strategies are going to be helpful. And again, remembering even when you have older children, they're functioning at younger ages. So you might incorporate these things for longer periods of time, getting them an agenda, helping them plan out how to study, how to prepare for something. I want to go, to a party on Saturday, but on Monday I have an exam or I have a presentation due. If you have no idea what's going on, then that's a problem. So when you come to some of these classes, what we do is we give you some of those tools, and then you can go home and you can practice them, because like we said in the beginning, these children need more patience, they need more tools, and they need us to really be that super parent, for lack of a better word, right? Like you can't just be an average parent when you have a child with ADHD. You do really need to get yourself organized and educated. So those of you that are here today and listening to this, I mean, you've got to step up. You've got a leg up already because you're here, you're listening to this. And it's sometimes just getting yourself organized and understanding, and then sitting down and having that communication with your child and knowing that you may have to alter your expectations, because we may think that our children are capable of doing this, and maybe they are, but they're down here, and how are we going to get them up here, and what's that pace look like? It might be. So these courses will kind of help you with that. And it's for all ages. You just modify what that's going to look like for your older children. You're not going to have sticker charts for older kids, but you can still have checklists. You can still have charts. And the motivator is, I'm paying for your phone. I'm going to drop you off at your friend's house. I'm going to give you more screen time. I'm going to give you more independence. It just shifts. And when you come to our classes, you can ask those questions to do, kind of tweak how you do that. But connect with your doctor, go to the school and advocate for your children, and work together as a team, because their job is not to do behavior management, but when you work together as a team, then you can set your child up for success, right? So it's always changing, and I find these sessions helpful, lots of reminders and a chance to ask questions about where they are now. I'm glad. Thank you very much for that message. I'm glad you find these helpful. And yeah, children change. We change as parents. Think about what kind of parent you were when they were little. We have to change because they're changing. We get organized and kind of, or we might get lost along the way, but these are great to come back to. And it's wonderful that there's a YouTube channel. Your Space Hamilton has a YouTube channel.
I'm sorry,
and we're recording
I
these sessions,
lost,
so you can come back and
Did we
listen,
address
or
the
send your partner, or send grandma.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
So lots of really good resources and apps here.
I did. Yeah.
Just.
Okay.
Oh, do I? Yeah, I'm getting weird.
You've got a funny feedback, Sue. You've got a funny feedback. Yeah. I don't know what's going on. So ADHD in a nutshell is a really good resource. Understood.org, Plant Love Grow is more anxiety stuff, but it's really good. A lot of children with ADHD have anxiety as well. Kid Points has free downloadables for morning charts, checklists, stuff for older kids, stuff on emotions. Really, really great stuff. Yeah, even when you're typing, I'm hearing that feedback. It's funny. So is there any more questions that we can address before we sign off?
No. Thanks for joining in, everyone. I hope this was helpful.
No other questions from anybody?
Definitely check out the Parenting Your ADHD Child, because that's a really good 3-session course.
Yeah, so here are some more. Yeah, so we will be doing Parenting Your ADHD Child. And it's 3 sessions, like Sue was saying. So, you can come back, you can work on things.
That starts in March.
This is our, where you can sign up. We have resources that you can download, like PDFs. We have a lot of videos that you can look at as well that are really short. And they're all. Okay, so lots of thank yous. Okay, perfect. So March, you can come back if you're needing a refresher or would like to.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Okay. So if there's no more questions, thank you for the nice comments.
Thanks, everyone.
And,
just a note from yours, please, Hamilton. We'll have the recording up on our resource page shortly, and you will receive a link with all the resources and apps that Sue and Michelle shared today, as well as recording. And we also have a whole bunch of sessions that are coming up soon with Sue and Michelle, so feel free to register for those and share it with anyone that you would find them helpful. Thanks for joining, everyone.
Thanks, Haruka.